She refused to say, "I love you," until one Tuesday morning changed everything. She needed money. He needed a wife. There were no vows, no love, just a contract with an expiration date. But what neither of them saw coming was how pretending to love someone could feel more real than anything they'd ever known. This is not a love story. It's a story about how love begins when it isn't allowed. Stay till the end, because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is feel something you're not supposed to.
Session 1, a contract, not a promise. The first time Grace Whitmore stepped foot into Caldwell Tower, she thought she was walking into an interview. Technically, she was. She just didn't realize she was being interviewed to be someone's wife. The elevator whispered its way up 43 floors, silent and cold, just like the man waiting for her at the top. Ethan Caldwell, youngest CEO in the company's history, heir to a billion-dollar empire, deadly in a suit and even colder in person. Grace had Googled him on the way up. Articles used words like brilliant, strategic, and emotionally unavailable. Sounded about right. When she walked into his office, he didn't look up right away. He was seated behind a glass desk that overlooked the entire Manhattan skyline. Not a hair out of place. Not a wrinkle in sight. Just power. And silence. "You're late," he said, still reading. "I'm 5 minutes early." He glanced at his Rolex. "Which is 10 minutes late in my world." She raised an eyebrow. "Well, in mine, it's the exact moment my last subway train could afford to get me here." That made him look up. Not a smile, but something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity? Annoyance? She couldn't tell, and didn't care. "You said this was a short-term administrative opportunity," she said, setting her worn leather bag beside the chair. He closed the file in front of him, leaned back. "I lied." Grace blinked. "I'm sorry? I don't need an assistant. I need a wife." She stared. "You what?" "You heard me." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside, a non-disclosure agreement, a prenuptial contract, and a schedule of events she would be expected to attend over the next 6 months. Black tie galas, board meetings, family fundraisers, a press interview or two. "Oh," she said flatly, "just your average love story." "It's not love," Ethan replied. "It's paperwork." That was when he told her the truth. His grandfather's will required him to marry by his 30th birthday to retain control of Caldwell Holdings. A sentimental clause in an otherwise ruthless dynasty. "I don't want a real marriage," he said, "just a public one, for 6 months. Then we part ways. You get what you need. I get what I need. Simple." Grace folded her arms. "And what is it you think I need?" Ethan's gaze dropped to the worn sole of her shoe. "To stop working 3 jobs to keep your mother on dialysis." Her breath caught. He knew. He had researched her, her background, her financials, her family. "I can give you what you're fighting for," he said, voice level. "All I ask in return is your name beside mine. For a limited time." Grace stared at him, at the absurdity, the arrogance, the offer. And then, softly, "Do I at least get to pretend I'm in charge of this decision?" His lips almost curved. "Almost. You'd be surprised how much power comes from looking like you belong." Grace picked up the contract. Her hands didn't tremble, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she'd never been more certain that her life was about to change in a way she couldn't undo. She left that office with a diamond on her finger, and a lie on her lips. "It's not real," she whispered to herself on the subway home. "It's not real." But something in her chest was already echoing back. "Not yet." Session 2, the first night. The penthouse didn't feel like a home. It felt like a museum, all glass, steel, and surfaces you were afraid to touch. The kind of place where people posed, not lived. Grace stepped inside with a single suitcase and a very real sense that she'd just entered someone else's life. Ethan didn't say much. He held the door, gestured to the elevator inside the apartment, and said, "Second floor is yours," then walked away. No welcome, no tour, not even a glance over his shoulder. Just silence. Grace stood in the center of the space, her shoes clicking on marble, and whispered under her breath, "Romantic already." The bedroom assigned to her was bigger than the apartment she grew up in. Soft lighting, silk sheets, walk-in closet that echoed. A separate bathroom that looked like it belonged in a spa resort catalog. She opened the closet. It was already filled. Dresses, coats, shoes, all her size, all designer, all chosen for her. She ran her fingers across a velvet hanger and muttered, "What am I, a mannequin with a pulse?" Then she laughed. A short, tired, echoing laugh. Because this wasn't real. None of it. But the money for her mom's treatment? That was very real. At dinner, they didn't speak. Ethan sat at the end of a table long enough for 10. Grace sat at the other. The food was catered. The silence was worse than the formality. She picked at her salad for 3 full minutes before setting down her fork. "This is weird," she said. Ethan didn't look up. "It's dinner." "No, it's a hostage negotiation with forks." He glanced at her then. Just a flicker, but it landed. Grace leaned back. "I know we signed a contract, but you're acting like I'm an inconvenience. You came to me, remember?" Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "I came to you for a function, not conversation." Grace smiled coldly. "Careful, Ethan, that almost sounded like you think people are furniture." "No," he said, "furniture doesn't talk back." She left the table before dessert and slammed her bedroom door a little harder than she meant to. That night, she couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft. The silence too thick. She missed the hum of the city. The upstairs neighbor who played guitar at 1 a.m. The drafty windows and the scent of cinnamon from her favorite bodega. Here, the air was filtered, lifeless, too perfect, too empty. At 2:14 a.m., she gave up. Wandered downstairs barefoot. Ethan was still up, of course. Sitting on the couch in the dark. Laptop glowing. Face illuminated like a painting you couldn't quite read. "You're working," she said. He didn't respond. She walked over. Folded her arms. "You always up this late? Or is this your way of avoiding eye contact?" He shut the laptop. Finally looked at her. His expression was unreadable. "I didn't think you'd want company." "I didn't say I did," Grace replied, sitting across from him. "I just said this is weird." Ethan stared at her for a long beat. Then, quietly, "I don't know how to do this." She blinked. "What, be fake married?" He shook his head. "Be close to someone who sees through me." The silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. It was real. Grace leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "I don't need closeness, Ethan." She looked him in the eyes. "I need honesty." He nodded slowly. Stood. Crossed to the liquor cabinet. Poured a glass of scotch. Then, without asking, poured her one too. She took it, and for the first time since walking through his door, they drank like equals. They didn't talk much after that. But when she went upstairs, she didn't slam her door. She closed it gently. Because maybe, just maybe, this arrangement was less about pretending to be married and more about pretending not to feel anything. Session 3, The Gala of Glass. If Grace Whitmore had $1 for every time someone looked her up and down like she didn't belong, she could have bought her own penthouse by now. Tonight, she'd have been a billionaire. The Caldwell Foundation annual gala was the kind of event that didn't just drip luxury, it drenched itself in it. Crystal chandeliers, champagne waterfalls, violins playing Vivaldi on a marble staircase, and a sea of people with last names that came with trust funds and private islands. Grace walked in beside Ethan. Her arm looped through his out of obligation. Not intimacy, but even that made her heart stumble in its rhythm. He looked untouchable tonight. Black tuxedo, no tie, shirt slightly open at the collar. Hair slicked back just enough to say, "I'm powerful. But I don't care if you know it." Grace, on the other hand, she was the charity case in couture. The gown was custom, a midnight blue satin that hugged her like a secret. The diamond earrings were on loan. The heels were borrowed. The confidence? Still on backorder. The moment they stepped onto the ballroom floor, heads turned, cameras clicked, champagne flutes paused midair. She heard the whispers before they even hit her skin. "She's the one from Queens, right? Waitress turned wife? I smell a PR stunt. She's pretty. I'll give her that. But Caldwell material? Please." Grace smiled politely, then squeezed Ethan's arm, hard enough to bruise. He didn't flinch. "Still think this is easier than a real relationship?" she whispered through clenched teeth. His voice was cool, low, careful. "Grace, you're clenching your jaw again. You only do that when you're scared." "I'm not scared." "Yes, you are," he said, eyes scanning the crowd. You're just hiding it better than most people in this room. They made the rounds. Handshakes, small talk, smiles that never reached the eyes. Grace could almost hear the words behind their grins. Prove you belong. Ethan, for his part, played the game like he'd invented it. He introduced her to senators, venture capitalists, his godfather who ran half the real estate in Manhattan. Grace nodded, laughed at the right moments, swirled her champagne glass like a woman raised at the country club. But inside, she felt like glass. Clear, beautiful, breakable. An hour in, she slipped away to the balcony. The cool air hit her like relief. She leaned against the railing, breathing deep, and just like that, the mask cracked. Not visibly, but internally. She thought about her mom, still recovering after dialysis, about the hospital bills this night was helping to pay, about the tiny apartment she used to call home, no chandeliers, no orchestra, but somehow more real than this entire ballroom. She didn't hear him approach, but she knew it was Ethan. Of course it was. He stood beside her, silent. Grace didn't speak, not right away. Then, why do you even want to keep this world? Ethan looked out at the skyline, the way the city lights blurred into the night like gold confetti. Because I built something in it. No, Grace said softly. You survived it. That's not the same thing. He turned toward her, and for once, she didn't see the CEO. She saw the man, tired, quiet, lonely in a room full of applause. I used to think being at the top would make everything quieter, he admitted, but it just made the silence louder. Grace studied him. You're good at pretending you don't feel anything. That's because no one ever cared if I did. Her voice was barely a whisper. I do. The words stunned them both. She hadn't meant to say it. Not out loud. Not like that. But it was true. She did care. About the way he rubbed his temple when he was stressed. About how he always made her tea just the way she liked it, even when he never asked. About the silence he carried like armor. He didn't respond. Didn't need to. The look in his eyes said more than any contract ever could. Suddenly the balcony door swung open. Veronica Caldwell, Ethan's older sister. Flawless, poised, dangerous. There you are, she said, sipping from a gold-rimmed flute. I was beginning to think you two had run off to elope again. Grace straightened, just needed air. Veronica's smile was sharp. You know, Grace, I'll give you credit. You clean up well. Thanks, Grace replied. You almost sound surprised. Oh, darling, Veronica purred, taking a step closer. I'm always surprised when Ethan brings home something he doesn't intend to throw away. Ethan's jaw tightened. Grace's heart pounded. But her voice? Steady. I may not have your pedigree, she said, chin high, but I've got something your entire world forgot how to use. Veronica arched a brow. Oh? Heart. She walked back inside, left Ethan standing there in stunned silence. Veronica blinked, laughed once. Well, she's got fire. Ethan's eyes didn't leave the door Grace had just walked through. Yeah, he murmured. She does. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Ethan stayed by her side now. Not out of duty, but out of choice. When a senator tried to corner Grace with patronizing questions, Ethan cut him off with a single look. When the media swarmed near the end, Ethan slid his hand around her waist, not possessive, but protective. And when they stepped into the limo at midnight, Grace leaned against the window and whispered, I don't belong in your world. Ethan. He turned to her. You're wrong. Why? Because it's not my world anymore, he said. She looked at him. You're in mine now. Back at the penthouse, the air felt different, warmer, still rich, still foreign, but now it smelled like something she could survive in. Grace walked to the kitchen barefoot, poured water, then turned to him as he loosened his collar. You didn't defend me to Veronica. No, he said, because you didn't need me to. She paused, then nodded. I didn't. And for the first time, he looked at her like she wasn't an arrangement. She was a choice. Later that night, as they crossed paths in the hallway, she stopped in front of him. No makeup, no mask, just Grace. Tired, beautiful, brave. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. Ethan swallowed. You're hard to miss. She reached for the door to her room, hesitated, then asked, softly, what happens if this stops being fake? Ethan didn't answer. Didn't need to. He stepped forward, took her hand, and kissed it. Once. Soft. Real. Then walked away. Grace stood alone in the hallway, heartbeat roaring, and somewhere, far below the marble floors and billion-dollar contracts, the glass finally cracked. But it didn't break. It opened. Session 4, the paper anniversary. Grace had never marked time in days before. But now, she knew exactly how long it had been. 31 days. Since the contract. Since the signature that changed her name but not her life. Or so she thought. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse's sunroom. Barefoot, wrapped in Ethan's oversized button-down, one he had accidentally left in the laundry room. She never gave it back. The city stretched out before her in soft gray hues. Quiet in the early morning fog. And for the first time in weeks, she felt something like peace. Until she turned and nearly screamed. Ethan was standing behind her with 2 mugs of coffee and a smirk that looked far too comfortable on his stupidly handsome face. "You need a bell," she said. "I live here. And I don't?" He held out the mug. "You do. Temporarily." Her smile faded just a little. "Temporary." There it was again. "Paper," Ethan said suddenly. Grace blinked. "What?" He set his mug down on the marble kitchen counter. "Paper. That's the traditional 1-month anniversary gift. Right?" She squinted at him. "You're joking." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim envelope. "Ethan, I know it's dumb, but I thought, you know, first month of fake marriage deserves fake sentiment." He handed it to her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a drawing, a pencil sketch. Crude, messy, but recognizable. Her, sitting on the kitchen counter at midnight. One sock on, hair in a bun, eating cereal with a ladle because they had no clean spoons. She laughed out loud. "You drew this? Don't sound so surprised." "Ethan, this looks like it was done by a drunk raccoon." He shrugged. "It's my first time sketching something that mattered." Her heart stopped, and then started again. Too fast, too loud, too real. She pinned the sketch to the fridge, right next to a magnet that said, "Coffee first. Everything else later." And beneath it, in loopy handwriting on a post-it, she wrote, "You tried. That's hot." Later that night, they had dinner. Not formal, not catered. Homemade. Well, technically, home-delivered. But Ethan had plated it himself. And Grace didn't mock him for the slightly burnt garlic knots. They ate at the kitchen island. Side by side. For once, the air wasn't thick with tension or silence. It was just easy. That terrified her. "You ever think about how weird this is?" Grace asked between bites. "The food? No. Us. This." Ethan didn't look up from his plate. "All the time." She blinked. "Wait, really?" "Of course." He set down his fork. "I invited a complete stranger into my life and told the entire world she's my wife. And I said yes because you offered me the kind of money that only comes with terms and conditions." Ethan's voice lowered. "I never wanted it to feel like that." She paused. "What did you want it to feel like?" He looked at her. And for a moment, the shield dropped. "Not fully. But just enough. I wanted it to feel like I wasn't alone anymore." Grace didn't know what to say. So she didn't. She just leaned over and stole a garlic knot off his plate. He didn't complain, but he did smile. By week 6, things were different. Their mornings bled together like paint in water, undefined but beautiful. She left notes in his briefcase. "Try not to glare at everyone today. Smiling is free. Remember to eat. Caffeine doesn't count as lunch." He texted her back with photos of grumpy board members and said, "Smile installed. Lunch ordered. Proud of me?" And when he got home, she always waited up. Not because she had to. Because she wanted to. But just as things started to feel real, reality hit back. At a dinner party hosted by one of Ethan's oldest business partners, the whispers returned. "Isn't she the waitress girl? I heard she faked her resume. You'd think Ethan Caldwell could do better." Grace excused herself and went to the powder room. She stared at her reflection for a long time. Diamond earrings, designer dress, perfect curls. And yet, none of it felt like her. Just a very well-dressed version of someone trying to keep up. When she came back, Ethan was already looking for her. He found her on the balcony. Arms wrapped around herself, lips pressed into a tight line. "Tell me," he said, "who I need to destroy." Grace laughed. "Hollow. No one." He stepped closer. "You don't have to carry this alone." She shook her head. "You don't get it, Ethan. You get to walk into rooms and be assumed capable. I walk in and have to prove I belong every damn second." He was silent. Then softly, "You do belong. She looked at him. And when the contract ends? His jaw clenched. I don't want it to end. The words lingered in the air. Loud, unfiltered, real. Grace blinked back, something sharp in her eyes. You can't say that. Why not? Because we started with an ending. Ethan's voice broke slightly. Then let's write a new start. Back at the penthouse, they didn't sleep in separate rooms. Not that night. Grace curled against him in the dark. His heart beat steady beneath her palm. They didn't kiss. They didn't rush. They just breathed. Together. Like maybe, just maybe, they were more than paper and signatures. The next morning, Ethan wasn't home, but a note sat on her nightstand. Meeting ran long, but I left you something in the drawer. Open it when you're ready. She pulled it open. Inside was a legal folder. She froze, heart thudding. But this wasn't the prenup. It was a contract termination form, unsigned. And beneath it, a letter. Handwritten. Ethan's words. If you want to walk away, I'll let you. But if there's even a small part of you that believes this could be something more, something real, then rip this up. And meet me on the roof tonight. No suits, no scripts, just us. Grace didn't rip it. Not right away. She stared at it for a long time. Then finally, without ceremony, she tore it in half. Then again, until it was just paper confetti. And suddenly, she couldn't stop smiling. That night, on the rooftop garden where city lights stretched like stars, Ethan was already waiting. No tie, no defense. Just a man in love with the woman he never meant to fall for. She stepped into the light. He turned, saw her, and whispered, "So, no more contract?" She grinned. Just feelings. They didn't need a kiss to seal it. They needed truth. And in that moment, it spoke louder than any vow. Session 5, More Than Make-Believe. The morning after Grace ripped up the contract, everything felt lighter. She danced barefoot to Sinatra while making pancakes, humming off-key as syrup dripped down her elbow. Ethan watched from the doorway, arms crossed, hair a mess, still wearing last night's smile. It was new, unspoken, but real. They were something now, no longer pretending, no more timelines or conditions. Just two people slowly undoing the lies they started with. But truth has a funny way of provoking chaos. By noon, it was on every screen in the penthouse. Breaking. Caldwell CEO's secret wife. Leaked past. Real motives? Grace Whitmore's connection to scandalous union leader father resurfaces. Contract marriage? Sources say yes. Photos. Articles. Blurred documents. All spinning the same narrative. She's a fraud. A manipulator. The woman who tricked Ethan Caldwell. Grace stared at the TV. Face pale. The headlines stung, but not as much as the comments did. Gold digger with a decent face. He must have lost a bet. I give it 2 weeks. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls from reporters, tabloids, strangers. But she didn't answer. She couldn't. Not when her chest felt like it was caving in. Ethan walked in, saw her shaking, saw the screen, and froze. She turned to him. Tears brimming, but not falling. Not yet. You said no one would find out. I didn't think they would. He replied quietly. But they did. He stepped forward. Grace, I know I signed up for this. I know I agreed to pretend. Her voice cracked. But I didn't agree to be humiliated. You're not, he said. She looked at him. Then why haven't you said anything publicly? That stopped him. Dead. Because he hadn't. His PR team had drafted a neutral statement. No comment. His board preferred silence. Investors wanted distance. And for the first time, Ethan realized his silence was hurting her. She waited for him to speak, to say she wasn't a fraud, that he chose her, contract or not. But he didn't. Not yet. And Grace? She nodded once. Tight. Controlled. Then turned. Walked upstairs. Closed the door. And didn't slam it. That's what hurt the most. By evening, the story was spiraling. Grace hadn't come out of her room. Ethan sat in his office. Phone buzzing with crisis managers, lawyers, board members, all demanding the same thing: distance, denial, damage control. Say it was a legal arrangement. Veronica said sharply over speakerphone. Say she was part of a clause. That she wanted out. That it's done. Ethan stared out the window. Sunlight slipping below the skyline like the closing of a curtain. And then, he stood, picked up his phone, and said, "Call the press. I'm going live." Grace was sitting on the bed when it aired. Hair undone, makeup gone, hoodie too big, but her heart? Still there. Still hoping. The screen flickered. Ethan appeared at a podium. No lawyers beside him. No team. Just him. He looked tired. Human. Then he spoke. There's been speculation about my relationship with Grace Whitmore. Some of it's true. Some of it's not. What matters is this. She didn't trick me. She didn't chase me. She saved me. When I was buried in power. Grace reminded me what it means to live. He paused, looked straight into the camera. This wasn't a contract. It was the start of something I didn't know I was allowed to want. One last breath. So say what you want. I'm not backing away. Not from her. Grace burst into tears. The silent kind. The kind that didn't need sobs. Just air. 15 minutes later, the elevator dinged. Ethan stepped into the bedroom. Breathless. She met him halfway. Wrapped her arms around him like they were always meant to hold something that delicate. I didn't expect that, she whispered into his chest. I didn't expect you, he whispered back. They didn't speak after that. They didn't need to. The world had finally been told. But inside their four walls? They already knew. This was no longer make-believe. It never had been. Session 6, The Fall and the Fire. The press conference changed everything. But not the way Ethan expected. Yes, Grace's name was cleared. Yes, the online hate died down. Yes, social media turned, calling her real and refreshing and the woman who tamed Manhattan's coldest heart. But the moment Ethan stepped back into the executive boardroom of Caldwell Holdings, he saw it in their eyes. He had chosen love, and that meant, to them, he had abandoned legacy. The meeting was quiet, too quiet. 12 men in suits, one woman with a silver bob, all staring, some amused, some indifferent, some ready to pounce. Let me make this clear, Ethan said, the company remains profitable. We've closed 2 major deals this quarter. Nothing's changed except your judgment. One man interrupted. Ethan's jaw tightened. Excuse me? You went on live television and admitted to engaging in a deceptive arrangement. You think shareholders appreciate confessionals? Ethan? It wasn't deception. No? Another asked. Then why didn't we know about the marriage until it leaked? I was protecting someone I care about. And now you're asking us to believe you can protect the company too? The word hung in the air. Belief. It had never been a requirement before. Only numbers. Only logic. Now? They wanted assurance. Emotional. Personal. Impossibly human. And Ethan didn't know how to give that. Not anymore. Not when the first thing that came to mind was Grace. That night, he came home later than usual. Grace was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, a bowl of popcorn half-eaten beside her. She turned when she heard the door. Studied his face. You didn't answer my texts, she said quietly. Ethan exhaled and sat down beside her. Bad day? He didn't reply, just leaned back, stared at the ceiling. The board thinks I'm compromised. Because of me, she whispered. Because of me, he corrected. Because I finally showed the world I had something to lose. Grace was silent for a long moment. Then she stood, crossed to the window. The contract ended weeks ago, she said, but I still feel like I'm costing you everything. You're not. I am. You're not. She turned to him, voice trembling. What if I am, Ethan? What if I'm the reason they never take you seriously again? He stood too, crossed to her. Then maybe I don't want to be taken seriously in a world that can't handle me choosing love. The words were brave, but the storm kept building. The next morning, headlines shifted again. Caldwell CEO's relationship causing shareholder rift? Sources say company might vote to suspend Ethan Caldwell temporarily. Ethan read it all in silence. Then closed his laptop. He wasn't surprised. Disappointed, yes, but not surprised. Grace walked in with coffee. He didn't speak, just took it, nodded, held her hand longer than usual, as if anchoring himself. 2 nights later, the storm broke. Veronica showed up at the penthouse. Uninvited. Her tone was cool, elegant, weaponized. You got 48 hours, she said, arms crossed. Ethan raised a brow. For what? Until the board votes. They're calling it a reassessment of leadership readiness. Grace stepped into the room then, sensing something. Veronica turned, and her voice sharpened like glass. You're the face of this mess. You know. Grace blinked. I'm sorry? You were supposed to be temporary. Veronica hissed. Instead, You turned a contract into a PR disaster. I didn't leak anything. You didn't have to. Your past did. Ethan stepped between them. Enough. But Veronica didn't stop. She looked Grace in the eyes and said, cold and clean, you might have his heart, sweetheart, but you'll never have his world. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She tossed, turned, replayed every cruel word, every doubt. She thought of the family Ethan came from. The boardrooms, the marble lobbies, the way people looked at her, even after the press conference. She slipped out of bed quietly, not waking him, walked to the guest room, sat in the dark, and wrote a letter. In the morning, Ethan woke to silence. No music from the kitchen. No coffee brewing. No Grace. He called her name. Nothing. He searched the penthouse. Nothing. Then, in the guest room, he found the letter. His name on the envelope. His hands trembled as he opened it. Ethan, this isn't running. This is making room for you to choose. I love you. I didn't mean to. I didn't plan to. But I do. And because I love you, I won't be the reason you lose what you built. If your world really can't handle someone like me, then maybe I was never supposed to stay. But if you come find me anyway, if you choose me, not in secret, not in whispers, but in front of everyone, then I'll believe you. I'll believe this was never just paper. Grace. Ethan read it once, then again, then dropped it on the floor and ran. She was at her old apartment in Queens. The one bedroom with peeling paint and the loud neighbor upstairs. He pounded on the door like a man with nothing left to lose. She opened it, eyes red, hoodie on, but still Grace. Always Grace. You didn't even give me a chance to fight for you, he said, breathless. She swallowed hard. I didn't want you to have to. But I wanted to, he said. He stepped forward, voice low, fierce. I don't care if I lose Caldwell Holdings. I don't care if my name never sits on another board. I care about you. And I'm done pretending that love makes me weak. It's the only thing that's made me strong. Grace's voice broke. What are you saying? I'm saying if I have to choose between a kingdom built on silence or a life built with you, I'm choosing the fire. They didn't kiss. Not right away. They just stood there, in a crappy hallway. Two people who had everything to lose. And everything to gain. And Grace, for the first time in a long time, let herself believe that maybe she wasn't the one burning everything down. Maybe she was the reason it was all finally being rebuilt. Session 7, the room where it happened. The boardroom at Caldwell Holdings was never designed for truth. It was designed for power. 12 chairs, one long table, mahogany polished so well you could see your reflection if you dared to look. And at the head, an empty chair once reserved for Charles Caldwell himself. Now it sat cold, waiting, watching. Ethan Caldwell walked in at 8:59 a.m. sharp. No assistant, no notes, no tie, just a man with nothing to prove and everything to reclaim. Gentlemen, he said, coolly nodding. And Veronica. His sister arched a brow. Still dramatic. I see. No, Ethan replied, just ready. The air was thick. Reports stacked neatly in front of each executive. Pages filled with revenue forecasts, reputation analyses, public sentiment graphs, all of them focused on one subject. Grace Whitmore. One man cleared his throat. Before we begin, let's be clear. This is not a personal attack. Ethan stared at him. Then why does it feel like one? We're concerned about optics. Investors are jittery. Investors don't run this company. Ethan shot back. We do. The woman with silver hair interjected. Your public confession on national television blurred lines. Ethan, between your personal and professional life. That's what we're here to discuss. No, he said, slowly walking to the head of the table. You're here to decide whether I'm still the man this company needs. He looked each of them in the eye. And I am. Veronica leaned forward. If you want to keep this seat, you'll have to start acting like it. By doing what? Ethan asked. Abandoning the only honest thing in my life? Veronica's voice sharpened. You're a Caldwell. Our name means something. Yes, Ethan replied. It means silence, control, loneliness in a glass tower. He turned, looked out the window at the skyline his grandfather once ruled. I've lived that legacy. I've honored it. I've sacrificed to keep it alive. He turned back to them. But I'm done pretending that being untouchable makes you strong. It makes you empty. Another board member shifted in his seat. So you're saying your relationship makes you better at this job? I'm saying my relationship makes me human. He paused. For the first time, I'm not leading from fear. I'm leading from clarity, from knowing what matters. Someone scoffed. Love is clarity? Ethan didn't flinch. No, Grace is clarity. Veronica narrowed her eyes. You're choosing her over this company? I'm choosing myself. His voice rose, not loud, but firm. For the first time in my life. Silence settled again. Not awkward. Reverent. He pulled something from his jacket. A copy of the original contract. The marriage agreement. He held it up. This was a business deal. He ripped it in half. And this, he pulled out a new document, is my resignation letter. A few jaws dropped. I'm not walking away, he clarified. I'm offering it. If you decide that loving someone openly disqualifies me from leading a company my blood helped build. He set the envelope on the table. You want the old version of me? Take it, but I won't become him again just to stay in this room. For a long moment, no one moved. Then someone, quietly, clapped. It was Elizabeth, the silver-haired board member. She nodded once. Your grandfather would have hated this. Ethan smiled faintly. Good. He didn't leave room for anyone to grow. She tapped her pen on the table. Let's vote. They didn't ask him to step out. They didn't hide the tally. When the results were in, Elizabeth spoke. 6-5. Ethan exhaled. But then, she smiled. You stay. Veronica's jaw tensed. She stood and stormed out without a word. But Ethan? He didn't watch her go. He was already pulling out his phone. Grace was painting her apartment wall when he showed up. Not because she needed to. Just because she wanted color again. Blue. The kind of blue that made her feel awake. She opened the door, paintbrush in hand, and stared. Ethan was covered in wind and defiance. And in his eyes? Something new. Peace. I didn't lose, he said. Grace smiled. That's great. I didn't walk away either. Her brow furrowed. Then what did you do? I made room. He stepped forward. And there's space in that room for you now. Not just beside me, with me. She laughed once. Ethan, you've said that before. I've never meant it like this. He handed her the resignation letter. Signed, but unsubmit. Read the date. She did. Tomorrow. Why not today? He stepped close. Because he wasn't trembling anymore. Because he knew who he was now. Because today, I wanted to walk into that boardroom and prove something. What? That I didn't need to leave the top of the world to bring you into it. Grace stared at him, heart thudding. He reached into his coat pocket again. Not a ring box, just a folded piece of paper. A drawing, another one of his clumsy sketches. Her, in paint-stained clothes, smiling, alive. Not a ring, he said, yet, just a sketch of who you are in my world. Grace looked up, voice soft. What am I in your world? Ethan? He stepped closer. Tiebreaker, truth teller, safe place, and starting line. Then, finally, home. She dropped the paintbrush and kissed him. Not soft, not polite, but like the answer had always been yes. Session 8, the window Grace left open. They didn't make a big announcement. No formal press release. No staged photo op. No curated quote in Forbes or People. Just life. Unfiltered. Unapologetic. Real. Ethan stayed CEO. Grace moved into the penthouse again. This time with her boxes, not a suitcase. The walls of the once sterile apartment now held real things. Polaroids taped to the fridge. A dog-eared copy of To Kill a Mockingbird on the coffee table. A lipstick kiss mark on Ethan's white button-down still hanging in the bathroom. It felt like home, but some storms don't hit with thunder. They creep in through cracks. Or windows left slightly open. It began with a name. Celeste Drake. Model. Philanthropist. Socialite. And once upon a time, Ethan Caldwell's almost wife. Grace saw the headline while scrolling half asleep. Celeste Drake returns to New York for private gala hosted by the Caldwell Foundation. Will sparks fly between Manhattan's former golden couple? She blinked, paused, laughed once, dry. Then she tossed the phone aside like it didn't matter. Except it did, because Celeste wasn't just a woman in Ethan's past. She was the version of him before Grace. Groomed, glossed, groomed again, perfect on paper. Exactly the kind of woman the world had expected Ethan Caldwell to marry. She didn't bring it up. Not right away. Ethan made breakfast, burned the toast again. Grace teased him about it. Stole his coffee, kissed his cheek, laughed at something dumb he said. but by evening, her chest felt too tight. So when Ethan sat beside her on the couch and said, "The foundation gala is next weekend. You'll be there with me, right?" She froze. "With you," she echoed. "While Celeste is back in town?" Ethan looked up, startled. "You saw the article?" She nodded. "Of course I did." He set down his glass. "I didn't invite her. You didn't have to." He tilted his head. "Grace." She tried to keep her voice steady. "I'm not mad. I'm not jealous." "Then what are you?" She met his eyes. "Worried I'm about to learn just how much of you I still don't know." Celeste came in like a ghost wrapped in silk. The gala was packed, wall to wall with Manhattan's polished elite. Cameras flashed like lightning. Grace wore navy again. It made her feel grounded. But when Celeste entered, the whole room tilted. Tall, flawless, ice blonde hair swept into a chignon. Skin like she'd never seen a single bad day. Ethan's arm tensed under Grace's fingers. He saw her too. "Ethan," Celeste greeted, her voice smooth and warm like an expensive lie. "It's been too long." "Celeste." He nodded. She turned to Grace, smiled, tilted her head. "And you must be the waitress." Grace's blood chilled, but her face didn't flinch. She extended her hand. "And you must be the ghost." Celeste's smile cracked for half a second. But she recovered. "I can see why you like her. So unpredictable." "I don't like her," Ethan said, eyes locked on Grace. "I love her." Later, after 3 glasses of champagne and 100 fake smiles, Grace stepped out onto the terrace alone. She needed air, needed space. And of course, Celeste followed. "You don't have to play the part. You know," Celeste said softly. Grace leaned on the stone railing, not turning. "What part?" "The new woman who changed him. I played it once. Didn't end well." Grace finally turned. "I'm not playing." Celeste's voice dropped lower. "Then you're braver than I was." There was something strange in her tone. Not venom. Something sadder. Wistful. "I left because Ethan was cold," Celeste admitted. "Strategic. A wall with a smile. I thought I could chip through it. But I realized I was just decorating the fortress." Grace didn't speak. "I heard what he did for you," Celeste added. "The press conference. The boardroom showdown." Grace nodded. "He's changed." Celeste looked down. "Or maybe he was always capable. Just not with me." Back inside, Ethan was looking for her. He found her standing just inside the glass doors. "Hey," he said. Grace turned. "What was she to you?" Ethan blinked. "Celeste?" She nodded. He stepped closer. "She was safe, familiar, beautiful, everything I was supposed to want." "And?" He paused. "She never saw me." Grace swallowed. "Do you think I do?" Ethan reached for her hands. Held them tightly. "You're the only person who ever has." That night, back home, she lay in bed while Ethan showered. The city lights flickered on the ceiling. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about ghosts and pressure and second chances. When Ethan climbed into bed beside her, she didn't move at first. Then, "Do you regret it?" He turned to her. "Regret what?" "Not choosing her." His voice didn't even waver. "Grace," he whispered, "I would rather struggle with you than succeed with someone who doesn't make me feel alive." She closed her eyes, let his words wash over the bruises she hadn't admitted to yet. Then she whispered, "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." But even as they held each other in the dark, they both knew this was the calm, and something bigger was coming. Not from outside, but from within. Session 9, The Undoing Hour. Sometimes, it only takes a second, a blink, a breath, a sound, to make you question everything. For Grace, it was a voicemail. It started as nothing. She was cleaning the kitchen, her playlist humming soft jazz. Ethan had left early for a foundation breakfast meeting, kissing her forehead as he whispered, "Don't let Mr. Bunn eat my tie again." She rolled her eyes. He smiled. Life felt easy. Until his phone, left on the marble counter, lit up. Missed call, Veronica Caldwell. No surprise there, but it rang again, then buzzed with a voicemail. Grace didn't mean to listen. She really didn't. But as she leaned to wipe the counter, her elbow tapped the screen just wrong, and the speaker clicked on. "Ethan." Veronica's voice was sharp, hushed, fast. "You need to get ahead of this." Celeste went to the press. "She says the contract marriage wasn't fake. She says you planned the whole thing with your legal team. Said you'd fall in love just enough to clean up your image before the next IPO." Grace stopped breathing. I told her to shut it down. But if this leaks before the shareholders meeting, we're dead. And if Grace finds out, it's over. Call me. Now. Click. Silence. The kind that burns. Grace stared at the phone. Heart thudding. Lips parted. She should have thrown the phone across the room. She should have stormed into Caldwell Holdings. But instead, she sat down. Because her knees had gone numb. She stayed there for 15 minutes. Then 20. Then, she stood. And left. Without a word. Without a plan. Just pain. And a question screaming louder than anything. Was I just the plan all along? Ethan didn't find the voicemail until after lunch. He called Grace first. No answer. He texted. Nothing. Then he saw the missed call from his sister. Played the message. And his stomach dropped through the floor. He found Grace 4 hours later. At the small park 2 blocks from her old apartment. The place she used to take her mom on warm afternoons. She was sitting on the same bench. Hair pulled back. Hoodie zipped to her chin. He approached slowly. Grace. She held up a hand. Don't. Please. Let me explain. I don't want the version you prepared. She said. Voice brittle. I want the truth. He swallowed. Hard. Celeste went to the press. I heard. And yes, when we started this, my team suggested a contract marriage might soften my image. Her eyes brimmed, but she didn't blink. So you picked me. I didn't pick you. He said quietly. You picked someone like me. She spat. A nobody. A safe story with a poor girl and a billionaire. Like a damn fairy tale you could sell. Grace. You found me. Researched me. You knew my mom was sick. You knew I'd say yes. Her voice cracked then. You didn't choose me for me. You chose me because I looked good in your press kit. Ethan stepped forward. I chose you because you challenged me. Her jaw clenched. I chose you because you called me out. Because you made me feel. And yes, maybe it started as a calculation. But it stopped being that the moment I burned my contract and begged you to stay. Grace stared at him. Eyes full of ocean. Rage. Love. Betrayal. Longing. I don't know what's real anymore. She whispered. He took one more step. Then let me remind you. He pulled something from his coat pocket. Not a ring. Not a sketch. A note. Crinkled. Faded. The first one she ever left him in his briefcase. Smile. Eat. Try not to set the boardroom on fire today. Gee. I kept every one, he said, because even when we were fake, you were real. He took her hand. Placed the note in her palm. Not because of how you looked beside me. Because of how I felt beside you. Grace closed her fingers around the paper. Tight. I don't want to be your image fix. You're not, he said. I want to be your mess. She whispered. Your bad day. Your favorite moment. Not the face you show the world. Then stay, he said, and be all of it. They didn't hug. Didn't kiss. They just stood in the fading light. Unsure if this was the end. Or the beginning of something brutally honest. That night, Ethan made a statement. Public. Clear. Grace Whitmore was never part of a strategy. She is not my charity. She is not my campaign. She is my truth. He turned off the comments. Not because he didn't care what people thought. But because he finally didn't need their approval. Grace returned home 3 days later. To their home. She didn't knock. She didn't speak. She just walked in, dropped her bag, and curled up on the couch. Ethan didn't say anything. He just brought her tea. And sat quietly beside her. And in that silence, 1,000 broken pieces began stitching themselves back together. Session 10, the promise with no deadline. Grace didn't move back into the master bedroom. Not yet. She said she needed space. So she took the guest room. The one with the smaller window and the creaky floorboard she never let Ethan fix because it made the room feel lived in. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't push. He just stayed close enough to reach if she needed him. And far enough to respect that she was trying to breathe again. They were rebuilding. From foundation. Not the curated kind with flowers and promises and clean slate metaphors. But the real kind. Where silence holds more meaning than declarations. Where love is shown, not said. Grace still left notes. Not every day. Not playful anymore. But sincere. Little truths tucked near the coffee machine or on the fridge. I slept okay. Thanks for not knocking. The eggs were overcooked but the coffee was perfect. I don't hate being here. That last one made Ethan smile for a full 2 minutes without realizing it. One Thursday. It rained. A lazy kind of rain. Ethan came home early and found Grace curled on the couch. wrapped in his favorite hoodie, watching Notting Hill like she was daring him to comment. You know he was way too awkward to land her, right? Ethan said, leaning on the doorway. Grace didn't look at him. But he showed up, she replied, even when he had every reason not to. Ethan crossed the room, sat beside her, let the silence stretch like a bridge between hearts too bruised to leap. Then quietly, do you want me to keep showing up? Her lips parted, her eyes stayed on the screen. But her voice? Soft, fragile. Yes. That night, Ethan cooked. Well, tried to cook. He burned the garlic again. The pasta stuck together like cement. The sauce boiled over. But when he set the plate in front of her with the pride of a man serving Michelin-level cuisine, she laughed until she cried. And something shifted. They ate on the floor, out of mismatched bowls, shoulders brushing. And for the first time in weeks, Grace leaned her head on his shoulder. Not because it was safe, but because she wanted to. Later, she sat on the edge of her bed while Ethan stood in the doorway. Neither of them said goodnight. Neither of them moved. Then Grace finally asked, "What do you want from me?" Not defensively, not bitterly, just open, raw. And Ethan? He walked in, sat beside her, took a breath, and said, "Not a vow, not a ring, not even forgiveness. I just want the chance to deserve whatever version of you stays." The silence that followed was thunderous. Grace looked at him, eyes full of disbelief, and maybe hope. Then she whispered, "What if I can't give you all of me right now?" He reached for her hand, squeezed gently. "Then I'll take the part you trust me with, and I'll earn the rest." Day by day. The next morning, Grace found something on the windowsill. A small wooden box. No lock, no ribbon. Inside, a folded note, handwritten in Ethan's unmistakably sharp but unsure script. Things I promise without a deadline. To never interrupt your quiet. To remember your coffee order even when I'm mad. To never weaponize your past. To keep one drawer empty for whatever you need to put away. To never ask you to be okay before you're ready. To show up. Every day. Even when it's raining. Especially when it's raining. Grace read it 3 times. Then closed the lid. Took it to the kitchen. Placed it beside the fridge magnets and old notes. And wrote one of her own. Today is a good day to start again. Ethan saw it later. Didn't say a word. But when Grace walked past him in the hallway, she paused and slipped her fingers into his hand. No fanfare. No music. Just presence. Days passed. Then weeks. The world moved on. The press found newer scandals. Celeste left the city. Caldwell Holdings hit another quarterly high. But none of that mattered. Not like this. On a cool Sunday morning, Ethan made pancakes. Successfully this time. Grace leaned against the counter, watching him plate them with unnecessary flair. "Are we okay?" she asked suddenly. He paused, then turned, stepped toward her, held her face like it was made of paper and gold and something unbreakable. Even if it had been broken before. "We're real," he said, "and that's better than okay." Grace kissed him. Long, deep, not the kiss of someone healed, but the kiss of someone healing. Session 11, the day she didn't say I love you. The morning started soft. Warm light slid through the curtains like butter on toast. The city felt quieter than usual. As if it, too, had paused to take a breath. Ethan had a plan. A simple one. No press. No calls. No interruptions. Just them, Grace and Ethan. The real version. Escaping the glass tower and chasing something that felt more like us. He rented a cabin by the lake. Packed a basket of things he hoped she liked. Wrote a letter he didn't plan to give her, unless the moment felt right. Grace wore that knit sweater he loved, the one with the stretched sleeves and fraying hem. She sat in the passenger seat with her bare feet on the dashboard. Hair pulled into a messy knot, singing off-key to the oldies station. Ethan stole glances every chance he could. She was the most grounded thing he'd ever known. And he was going to tell her. Today, the cabin was modest. No marble, no skyline. Just creaky wood floors, mismatched mugs, a fireplace that needed coaxing, and a view of the lake that looked like something pulled straight from an old photograph. They unpacked in silence. The good kind. The kind that feels like home. Later, they sat on the dock, wrapped in one blanket, toes skimming the cold water. Ethan turned to her, heart in throat. "I used to think love was about saying the right thing at the right time." Grace looked up, Expression unreadable. But you taught me love's not about what you say. It's about who you stay for. A pause. Then, I love you, Grace. He said it clearly, softly. The way someone says something not for the first time, but like it matters more this time. Grace blinked. Her lips parted. She looked away, back at the water, then said, "Thank you." Ethan's stomach dropped. She didn't say it back. He waited, hoped, counted the seconds, but it never came. Just the sound of ripples and the quiet unraveling of something he hadn't realized he'd pinned all his hope on. That night, she curled into him in bed, arms wrapped tight, face buried in his chest. But Ethan couldn't sleep, not because she hadn't said it, but because he didn't know why. The next day was strange. She smiled, kissed him, held his hand, but there was something else behind her eyes. Something heavy, something almost afraid. He didn't ask, not yet. They drove back to the city in near silence. Not angry silence, but the kind where hearts are still trying to figure out if they beat the same rhythm anymore. 3 days later, Ethan found the letter she left on his desk. Not a goodbye, not a confession, just a truth. "Ethan, you've said, 'I love you,' like it's a promise you're dying to keep. I haven't said it because I don't want to say it just to fill the air. I've said it too easily before. To the wrong people, in the wrong rooms, and it lost meaning. I'm learning how to trust love again. I need you to let me say it when it's mine. Not when you need to hear it. When I need to give it. Grace." Ethan read it twice, then sat back in his chair, and smiled, because now he understood. That night, she walked into the kitchen, barefoot, in one of his shirts, her hair messy from the rain. He didn't say anything, just poured her tea, handed it over, and whispered, "I'll wait." She smiled, eyes soft, and in that moment, without a single, "I love you," spoken, she said it louder than words ever could. Session 12, the day she said it. It didn't happen on an anniversary, or a holiday, or any kind of cinematic, fireworks in the sky day. It was just a Tuesday. The kind of day you forget, unless it changes you. Ethan had woken early. The sky outside their window was still gray-blue. The kind of quiet light that doesn't rush anything. He watched Grace sleep, the soft rise and fall of her breath, the way her hand still curled slightly, like she was holding onto a dream. He thought of all the mornings before, when he used to wake up alone, convinced love was a risk men like him couldn't afford. But now he knew better. Because there she was. Not because she had to be. Because she chose to be. Every day. He didn't wake her. He just got up, made coffee, and left her favorite mug by the stove with a note. "Pancakes in progress. Coffee's strong. You're stronger." By the time Grace wandered into the kitchen, barefoot, hair wild, one sock missing, he already had batter on his shirt and flour on his cheek. She grinned, sleepy, crooked, familiar. "You're a mess," she mumbled, grabbing the mug. He kissed the top of her head. "You say that like it's new." They ate on the balcony, wrapped in one big blanket, sharing a plate, letting the morning unfold without needing to fill it. Grace set her coffee down, looked out at the city, then at him. Then, "Ethan? Yeah?" A pause, a breath. She reached for his hand, laced their fingers together, held tight, and then she said it. Not rushed, not forced, just real. "I love you." Ethan froze, not because he didn't believe it, but because it came so quietly, so gently, like the sunrise behind her, like forgiveness in human form. She looked nervous, like maybe he wouldn't believe her, like maybe saying it too late was worse than never. But Ethan just leaned forward, touched his forehead to hers, closed his eyes, and smiled. "You're right on time." They didn't need a vow, didn't need rings, didn't need the world watching. They had this, a balcony, a sunrise, a cup of coffee, and the truth, spoken not to save a company, not to impress a boardroom, not to calm a fear, but because love had grown wild between them, and finally, she was ready to name it. Later that day, Grace found a key tucked inside the kitchen drawer. Not labeled, just familiar. She held it up. "What's this for?" Ethan looked at her, grinned. "The back door." "To what?" He stepped forward, kissed her temple. "To wherever you need to go. And the promise that I'll always leave a light on." They didn't need to talk about forever. They were already living it. One Tuesday at a time. The story behind the story. This wasn't a love story that started with fireworks. It started with paperwork. with pretending, with strategy, but it became truth, not because it was perfect, but because two broken people chose to stay. Every day, even when it got hard, especially when it got quiet. Because love isn't loud, it's consistent, it's presence. It's a woman who didn't say I love you until she meant it so deeply. It changed the air around her. It's a man who once thought control was power until he gave it up to hold someone's heart instead. Sometimes, the most powerful love stories don't begin with, I love you. They begin with, I see you. I choose you. I'm not going anywhere. The end. Thank you for watching today's CEO Love Stories. Every love story is a journey. One filled with passion, ambition, sacrifice, and unforgettable moments. Here at CEO Love Stories, we bring you the most compelling tales where power, success, and love collide. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget, like to support more incredible content. Comment your thoughts. Can love overcome power and ambition? Subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss our next breathtaking romance. CEO Love Stories, where love and power collide. Because love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. See you in the next story.